How about now? How about now? What do we think? We feel it? All right, cool. All the way to the... Okay, thank you. All right. All right, we're at 1:30, and I'm excited to get started. I do want to let you know that this is not a session where you are going to be able to just sort of work on your own. This is a session where we're going to be talking to one another and with one another and collaborating together. So if you are alone at a table, I encourage you to move. If you don't do it now, you're just going to have to do it later, that's fine. But before we get started, the doc that we will be using is just bit.ly/inedbook14cops. COPS as in communities of practice, okay? Which you don't have to call them cops if you don't want to, but that's something that I enjoy every once in a while. Before we get started and sort of talking about the goals of the session and all that kind of stuff, I do want to introduce myself and also understand who is in the room. Okay, I am the guy who's been wearing Google Glass and annoying everyone with it. I am the guy who sometimes records things in his car inappropriately with the Google Glass by placing it on the dashboard. I sometimes just leave it on and do a picture-in-picture with the visor down. Sometimes I don't even use the Google Glass for recording. I'll just record myself with the Google Glass on. And sometimes I'm just the guy who walks around Denver recording himself. My name is Ben Wilcox from Denver, Colorado, and welcome to another 2-minute PD. Today I'm going to talk about blended learning. And I know a lot of people who think about blended learning as a combination of face-to-face and online experiences. But to me, it is a lot more simple than that. It's about doing things that you couldn't do previously with the tools that make it all possible. We didn't used to be able to collaborate with 50 people on the same idea at the same time from around the world. We weren't able to collect all of our learning and carry it with us for our entire learning careers. We didn't used to have an audience more authentic than a single teacher and the 30 kids around us. Blended learning is what makes that and so much more possible. So what does that mean for your classroom? It means that you share that lesson plan that you have with everyone in your school. It means that you use collaborative documents instead of static ones. It means that feedback comes from more than just the teacher. Blended learning is about being connected rather than separated from other teachers and learners around the world. And that's why it's so important. We can no longer be isolated within our classrooms or within our schools. When I was teaching 7th grade, one of my students was sick, and they were working on a project. They were trying to survive on a deserted island. And everybody was getting a role on that island. Because this kid was sick, she didn't think she was going to get the right role, but because it was a collaborative document, she logged in early and put her name next to the role she wanted. And it was really then that I knew that blended learning was something different. It enabled things that were not previously possible. So what's one thing that you could try tomorrow? Open up your calendar for collaboration. Get outside once in a while and create something. Lesson plan with somebody else. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because at the end of the day, it isn't about which tool you've chosen to use, and it isn't about which device you have in your hands. Blended learning is really just learning, using all of the tools at our disposal. When people ask me what blended learning looks like, I say it looks like walking around my city with the right tool in my hand, making new learning possible for myself and others. So I'm that guy. I'm also the director of personalized professional learning in Denver Public Schools. Before that, I worked with at Modo during the period of time where they went from 500,000 users to 5 million users, which was really cool to see why all of these teachers and students were getting to sort of think about their classrooms in a different way. Before that, I was a 7th and 8th grade English teacher, as well as an online learning specialist in Douglas County. So I've had a lot of different roles, but one of my favorite roles is actually having and creating community. And that's what I want to do today. So if you are in yonder document, you will see that the purpose of our session here is to outline how communities of practice, and specifically online communities of practice, can be a key driver of change within a school or district. And I'm also hopefully going to be engaging everyone in here and thinking about what it means for you. If rather you were looking to dig deeply into every single benefit of online communities, then that's not why I'm here, because I would like to figure out what it means to you and what benefits you see for it. We're going to understand and define what online communities are all about. We are going to identify some good practices by looking at some interactions inside of online communities. And we're going to join the blendtastic, bombastic, personalized PD. And so that's something that we are going to do within here. All I need from you is to be really good at being active teachers and learners. I'm going to ask some questions, hopefully propose some ideas. And as long as you are using all of the devices that you would like to be using in the ways that you would like to be doing that and interacting and collaborating with each other, be on Twitter, take notes, collaborate in any way that you see fit. I'll give you a couple of interactions where we'll all come back together all at once, but feel free to go off on the tangent if you really do like. Before we go any further, I need to know who is in here. So, how many of you are classroom teachers and will be doing so next school year? Okay. How many of you are in the weird middle ground between teacher and leader, or you are a school leader that has somewhat ill-defined action within a school? Okay, perfect. I like that. And how many of you are full-fledged, I'm an administrator, I've been in a role that's been in existence for a while? Okay, perfect. So we've got some really good variety here. How many secondary focus? How many elementary focus? How many like we focus on everybody? Okay, perfect. So I do feel like we've got some good variety and even some good mixing. I didn't see everybody all sitting together, which I like a whole bunch. This work actually came from a lot of the things that we're doing in Denver Public Schools. One of which is when we were starting to think about online communities, I realized that we needed some leaders, whether those were school leaders or district leaders, to start these communities and to tend to them. And so we've been leading this work with online community of practice managers, and the first 8 sessions have happened, and you can feel free to take those first 8 sessions and do them yourself, or to think about how you would do them better. But all of those notes documents are there. You can also join our DPS sort of centered online community practice manager community, where we all get together and talk about things. And all of the research that we'll talk about is actually within this link, the literature review and synopsis. All right, now we get to the fun part where we talk to one another and do a little collaboration. There are a couple of things that I want to start out with. Online communities of practice have 3 things. They are online, they are communities, and they are of practice. And I want to know why. Okay? So, the questions are, what makes a group into a community, and what makes it a community of practice? And the question that I always kind of start with is, by getting together today, are we a community? Okay? By being in the room together today, or are we simply a group of people? And what would we have to do in order to become a community? Okay? So thinking about these 2 questions, and then we'll come back together and just talk about why we might want to make it online. But I want you to think about this, and you're going to have about 5 minutes to talk about it. What makes a group into a community, and what makes it a community of practice? Okay? If you need to go half-mast so you don't get distracted by your laptop, you can do that. But I feel like for 5 minutes, talk to people at your table. Go! Oh.
Which is also good.
So make sure you bring that up, because I love that idea of learning. All right, finish up that last thought. All right, this is a collaborative document, so if you don't get a chance to raise your hand and say your piece, then please do write it in, or you can take notes for the people that are speaking. Perfectly fine with that. But I'd love to know, what did you guys talk about? What makes a group a community? Yeah. The interaction. So we're interacting now. Are we becoming a community? Okay. What else? Yeah.
We were talking about interests, common goals, common vision.
Well, I think that's interesting that there's something common about it, right? Like there is a common goal or an interest. Okay. So I think when we have common interests, does that automatically make us?
No, it was
Okay, so there's another component there of trust, and then that trust would likely have to be built, right? Yeah.
To go deeper with the common interest, we defined it as like a purpose or a reason. So it's a common interest that like we're doing something that we can have this drive together. And that makes a community have a purpose together.
Well, I think that purpose speaks to like coming back to something, right? Because I think that if we are all in community here, that there is a purpose to come back to, right? It's not something that just would happen that one time. Other thoughts about it? Yeah.
I think that there's diversity within the community, so there may be some really great contributors to the community, but there's also people who are learning within the community and to value the different perceptions and opinions as a whole of that community. So the outliers are not necessarily outliers, they're really a part of it.
So I think that's interesting, that idea that like we would value diversity within a community, whereas a group may value some homogeneity, right? That's a word that I'm going to use right now. Homogeneity, right? And so when we're looking at that and actually valuing that diversity, to me, then that, and honoring it, then that is what then starts to create the community. All right, we can keep on talking about that, but I want to think about what makes a community of practice. What makes it of practice? I think we can have common interests, common goals, things like that. So application itself, right? Somebody, I was talking to another group, they were just talking about, well, you're doing something, right? It's the action behind it. And so, to me, like the practice becomes, well, those are the actions we're taking, okay? Anybody think about it a little bit different?
I'm just thinking that maybe reflection before
And reflect. Okay, so thinking about, well, maybe the action isn't necessarily done in the community, it's done elsewhere, and then you bring the reflection in. Yeah?
Like with yoga practice, like a habit or a schedule or a, I don't know if it's something that happens.
So there's some aspect of time, right, that is really important here, right? That there is some schedule. I always kind of ask this question, how many of you have seen me like wearing my 4-month-old around the neck? Okay, so, right. So one of the things that we do as, with him is we do cloth diapers, and like, of course, you know, it's gross and in all kinds of different ways, but it's wonderful in a lot. And so we have all of these really specific questions that if I put out on Twitter, how do I stop my 4-month-old from peeing out of his cloth diaper? My PLN is not super supportive, perhaps, about that particular topic. It's not a community that is based upon that discussion. But my wife, being the industrious woman that she is, she found a Facebook group that is specifically interested in talking about cloth diapers. And so that was their practice. And she was asking that question, found like 12 answers, by asking that question, and they became a community, and now they have this conversation over time. Now, hopefully we won't always be cloth diapering. Sometime, both of my other two children are potty trained, so hopefully that will work out for a third as well. But I think about this, that it's of practice for a reason. Like, we are doing something, and our shared practice, hopefully, is about teaching and learning. But then it begs why we should do it online. If we're able to come up here to Copper once a year and collaborate, why do we need to put it on? I guess it's kind of a loaded question, but I'm asking, like, why does it have to be online? What is the powerful nature of doing that, or the difference? Yeah. Timeliness? What do you mean by that?
Well, the reason I'm online was just purely because I want immediate feedback. I want timely articles that I read. I don't want to hear later about it. I want to hear about it.
And so by doing that at the time that you want, it is not only timely, like sort of just in time, but I would ask this question: how many of you have found an amazing resource or person online past the hour of 10 p.m.? Okay? This is not typically, and especially for those of you who have children, not typically something you would be able to do otherwise. Okay? Yeah?
And I would say, I think, for example, here you get so much. So by having that online community, you can, access when you're ready, or get more information, or say I didn't quite understand it. So support, I guess, would be the word.
Right. And so by having it online, that support is not only timely, but it's just ever present, right? Like, we can have it, and you feel that support anytime you engage. Yeah. Right? Cheaper, more efficient in a lot of ways, right? Because I don't have to go to ISTE in order to have the support of a lot of the people that attend that conference. Yeah.
And there's kind of going back to the diversity, the fact that, like you're saying, not being able to go to ISTE, but you still hear from educators from other states, other countries, other districts. Just in Colorado, and I always find it interesting to find some districts are dealing with the same issues that we are. Really, others, they've solved that problem. It's kind of like, there's hope, there's a right. But I think that's the other part, is you have a much broader audience and much more different experiences to draw from. When you're just talking inside your building, you're limited.
Absolutely. You get the diversity of perspective,
yes,
even is even that much more valuable. Yeah, something else?
But I was just say, like, I can connect with people across the country, across the continent, across the world now in online communities that I didn't even have access to 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago when I started teaching. That has opened up a whole new arena, new people to learn from, and people that I can connect with and share ideas and resources with.
And I think that's so powerful to recognize that we are not limited to sort of the location that we are in, the space that we're in. Okay? But I also hear within that, there's also this like expectation of, well, now that I have access to all of these people, isn't that also incredibly overwhelming? And how do I make sure that I'm doing this in a way that makes sense for me? And what sort of my focus is, right? Like that idea of the community. Do I have to have a community of 1 million people in order to get access to that? Or can I still have that small community feel, but still have a wide reach? Yeah, one last thought, maybe?
I think that online community is going to be a temporary way of explaining that. I think that because currently, when we say we're a community, it sounds local.
Mm.
And right now, we use the word online community to imply not local, to anyone in the world. And I think really,
so do we have a better word?
I think eventually it's just going to be a community practice. So it implies community. It doesn't need to be
wherever you are.
Wherever you are. So I think currently we just need that word to add it now, but I think it'll be more common that community is community, whether it's online or face or however that is.
Exactly. And so I very often will talk about, well, what are the other communities that are going on in the school, right? So there is the PLC that's happening, there are these other structures that exist. And yet, like somehow online communities, well, that's just something somebody else does, right? versus, well, this is just the community that we have, and this is our online space, and this is our physical space, and this is when we go outside and have a drink. And, you know, those kinds of things, I do think that there's a coming together of that. All right, if you scroll down the document, what I want to do is talk a little bit about the assumptions for learning in communities of practice. Okay, these are things that were taken from that research article that's listed at the top, but I've also modified them for our purposes here today. Okay, these are my assumptions. If you have other assumptions, you can list them at the bottom. But learning is fundamentally a social phenomenon. It is integrated in the life of communities that share values, belief, languages, right? That's something that we've already talked about. The process of learning and the process of membership are inseparable. Think about that one for just a second. The process of learning and the process of membership, right? So the process of becoming a member is the process of learning. Those are very, very much intertwined. Knowledge is inseparable from practice, and then the idea of empowerment. The ability to contribute to a community creates the potential for learning. Here's what I want you to do. I would like you to take about 3 minutes, and I'd like you to comment on these assumptions. The ones that are most resonant with you, the ones that you disagree with most vehemently, the ones that you believe are going to challenge you and your own practice. So if you've never commented on a Google Doc, that's perfectly fine. I'll show you just very quickly. All you have to do is select the words that you would like to comment, and you can either right-click or do the shortcut, or you can even use this little comment button up at the top. And then you write your comment and press the comment button. I do suggest choosing the smallest amount of words possible to make the comment rather than selecting all of them and say, I agree, because that gets to some better discourse. But for about 3 minutes, I want you to think about what of this resonates with you and do a little bit of commenting on the doc. And I think we're right around 50 in here. So you should be okay, but if not, then we can have somebody else comment for you, I suppose. But take about 3 minutes and think about what resonates most with you. Go! And if you're done making your own comments, reply to a couple of those. A lot of people talking about hearing all voices. So if you scroll all the way down,
I would say,
So in theory, it should either spit you back out to Google Drive or it will open it up. It's above 50, so you can
Looking at the total picture.
well, clearly that's. All right. Finish up whatever last comment you are going to make. And before we move on, what I would like to ask you is, what did you just do? Collaborate? Participate? What else? Yeah. Okay, maybe not. Okay. What else? Communicated your opinion, gave your opinion. Question. So my follow-up then is, could you do all of those things without being online? It might take a little bit more time. My contention is that we actually don't have a word for what we just did. Like, this is a different type of collaboration or participation or engagement than we have ever had the possibility of doing before. When we have these kinds of conversations online in these types of spaces, we just use the same words that we've always used. Oh, well, I'm going to go collaborate. I'm going to go have this conversation. I'm going to go communicate with my fellow teachers and leaders and learners and all of those kinds of things. But we actually don't have a word for what we do within the margins of a Google Doc, what we do within an online community. And if you come up with the word, let me know, because I'm super interested in what that might be, because it's different somehow than what we would traditionally do. How many of you have ever had a silent class? Okay, where all you were doing was collaborating through the web? It's something that I wouldn't say you should do that often, because I like talking and getting student voices into the actual air and things like that. But that idea that we could actually have an entire collaborative discussion without having a collaborative discussion is really interesting to me. Okay? One of my favorite activities was in teaching 7th grade. We would talk about at the beginning of the year their ideal learning environments. We would have a silent day where all they were doing was talking online and talking about their favorite ideal learning environments. And then we would reflect and say, what aspect of this would we need to be here for? Like in the physical space of the classroom, what aspect of these learning environments do we need to be speaking, talking with one another? And it was this challenging moment of deciding, well, could we do all of these things online? What aspects are really valuable about having people in the same places? Because I think there are a lot of them. Now, as I was looking through, a lot of folks are really interested and sort of talking through what those characteristics are, you know, how we hear all of the voices and why it's important to hear all of the voices. I also heard a couple of people talking about lurking and the idea of non-participation within a community. How many of you were talking about that either earlier or within the margins? Okay? I need a definition of a lurker. Okay, what are you guys thinking about? What was your definition of a lurker?
A person who is perhaps newer to the community who wants to observe and learn the norms of the community before jumping into.
And so it could be somebody who's new, wants to learn a little bit. Okay, what were you thinking?
Some people are, maybe they don't feel they have anything to contribute. And so I do think there are some people that they are, they're there to learn. They might not contribute because they don't feel like what they have to share is worthwhile. I think there's some people that are considered that way. And there are some people that maybe just fine, they're going, I'm just here to get what I can get and go on my way.
And so is there a value in the lurker? in our communities? What is the value of a learner? Yeah.
They still can absorb that information and use it for whatever they need. You know, like with the ultimate idea of students first, and they still take that information back to students, whatever they need.
They are still gaining something from the community, but what's the value to the community of the learner? An audience, and probably a pretty authentic audience because they themselves selected into. Yeah.
I think learners obviously for a short term, but I think can be equivalent of a digital introvert. I mean, there are plenty of students and teachers, although it's not common, where their voice comes out in different ways, whether it's art or whatever. And I don't know that they have to always be an active participator to be a.
So I've never heard the term digital introvert, but I love it. I think you just coined it. Who do we need to attribute it to?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
oh, Johnny, come on.
Okay, so Tanya coined the term right here. Okay, but I love the idea that we should be respecting and paying attention to the idea of digital introverts. And how do we do that? I feel like there's something going on at this table over here that needs to be said. What's happening? Go for it.
Sorry, I have some thoughts. One, I didn't know the term working until I was working at Professional Writing. And so we've done a ton of talking about working. But what I think is interesting about, like, I'm the least introverted person maybe around. So I don't think that it's necessarily always the digital introvert as it is, like, there is so much, like, in this tag board that's being put out there that sometimes I think that that lurker is actually using, like, discretion and not just further, like, I think a lot of it has kind of gotten diluted and there's so much out there that I really, as a consumer, only want to put something out there that I think has a lot of substance and value to it.
And to add to that, I think, you know, as a DPS employee, I'm part of 15 Google communities. And those are all communities that the leader of those communities said, come join the community. So now there's 15 of them. I don't have time to do more than work. And so the tweet that was put out there earlier this week really had that negative connotation of work. When in reality, it's, I'm looking for something that's going to benefit my students. You know, I'm going to be shopping around for what's best for my students. And if I don't have time to reply to something, you know, to go back into that community and say something, that shouldn't be looked at as a negative aspect. That should be maybe looked at as a more efficient way of doing it.
Well, I think about the idea of critical thinking, right? Like, we're encouraging our students to be critical sort of consumers of online information. Why wouldn't we do the same? Why wouldn't we be curating what only we find the most relevant, or that we find that we can engage and we have time to engage? I think there's some power there in saying that we don't have to be sort of, you guys know the term bloggeria? Like where you're really just putting as much as you possibly can out there, and yet you're not actually engaging in a conversation. And so each time that you put something out there, you find that engagement that much more valuable, okay, and that much more powerful. Okay, one last thought, yeah.
I think it can be a generational thing too. I think millennials tend to really respond well to feedback and comments on their Facebook posts, etc. And I don't think that's not a bad thing at all, but I don't think it's necessarily true of older students of life, you know. I think it, but I also think we have to be aware for our students that they are of that mindset and of that culture.
Well, I think what you're talking about is the different ways we need to be able to validate people within these online spaces. So some people really do need the +1 or the like, or whatever that looks like. And some people just need a really great question that they need to be, someone asks and probes deeper, right? So I think the idea of the ways in which we engage is pretty important. So we're going to start to look at the at some individual interactions within an online community. And what I want to do before we get there is just sort of summarize. These are all of the things, both from the research and sort of what we've talked about, that the key components are all about. And we do have the animated GIFs there of sort of going through each one. But that it is about shared practice, that we are looking for diverse and heterogeneous membership, that they are not necessarily task-oriented, but can be, and that they are primarily learning communities. But what I want to move on to now is taking a look at some examples. I have 5 different examples of interactions within an online community of practice, and I want to know why these are good examples. So I'm saying they are good, but I want to know why they are good. What is it about them that seems interesting, valuable, that relates to the way that we are talking about communities? So if we look at the English learners one, it'll open up, and my hope is that the Wi-Fi is good enough for us to do this. But what I want to do is take a look at each one of these. Maybe not. And so what you should be able to do, and each one is actually a Google Drive image, and it loads up like this. And you're like, well, I can't read that. And you shouldn't be able to, no matter how old or young you are. The way to make sure that it actually shows up so that you can read it is to click the 100% button right there. And then you're going to be able to read it. Use the arrow keys to hop up and down to read the responses and go through. And the way that you comment on an image in Google Drive is a little bit different, and I love it. My favorite thing to do is to click on this button right here that was next to the 100%. Looks like this thing right there. And then I highlight the thing that I would like to comment on. Okay? And then it gives me a new comment box. Okay, the reason why I like highlighting on images and doing the commenting is because then I can make it as small or as big as I want to. And I can actually have a very focused conversation rather than having it link off to 12 or 13 or 150 other things. And so what I'm doing here is selecting the things, and you can see if you want to read the other comments. You can select this and see what's going on. I can select any one of the individual squares that are there and see what the comment was about. But what I want you to do is go in, comment on what you think is most valuable about these, or more specifically, why this is a good example of an online community of practice. Okay? Take about 5 minutes to do that. I want you to look at these examples, even if you can't comment, if you're on a device that's not super great at that, that's perfectly fine. But go through and read the examples in the 30 minutes. Okay? Go. Yeah, I just did a big screenshot, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh.
I'm such a big fan of the rainbow of colors. Yeah. If you get to have any questions, yeah.
That's a good question. What was the big question here?
How is this a good example of an online community interaction?
Okay. Well, everyone has.
Okay, about one more minute. Take a look. That's all over. All right, wrap up that last comment or thought. All right, and what did you guys see here? Somebody tell me something that they saw in the science one, the physics. Anybody tackle that one? All right, nobody's a science teacher, that's fine. In one of the other ones that you saw that you either liked, thought was valuable to call attention to. Yeah?
Well, the one in the language arts team showed that it was active. He had a variety of people answering. Someone commented, like, why didn't they answer the part about the phone? But, I mean, I think it's okay if you post online to just answer part of it. If you had to answer all of it, it would be a blog post that would take time. So if he wants more clarification, he could say, thanks for all the responses. One last thing, we didn't even know how we could do this on the phone, and then he could clarify that. But I thought it was good.
Yeah. So there were questions there. People were answering at least parts of what was going on. One thing that I was talking about with somebody else was just this idea that there are pieces of etiquette or norms that are being established, right? There are pieces of these things that are being established within these conversations that if you're not in that community, you might not know yet, right? Anybody find an example of a norm that they thought was kind of valuable to call out? How about the Khan Academy one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Respectful conversation, but some dissonance, some, disagreement is okay in a group, and that's how you grow, and that's how you learn, but being respectful about it.
Right. And I think that as a norm, like that's something that you only get to do over time, right?
With reflection, with listening to other people and understanding what other people are talking about.
Exactly. And so to me, like establishing these norms, establishing what these good practices are, it is something that you have to do with others. You cannot, at the very outset, say, we're all going to trust each other, right? Like we are all going to disagree. Like we can set up what the norms might be, but we can't do that, and people won't understand it until it's practiced. And that, to me, is what the community of practice is all about. All right, so to me, this brings up a pretty important point, okay? And that is that any time that we are engaged in professional learning of any kind, this is an option, but it is a challenging option. Okay? It requires us to shift from formal learning or more formal learning to something that is much more about learning in practice. It requires us to go beyond either face-to-face or one-shot PD events. Okay? These are communities that are over time and across space. Can't just do like the one time that we're here together. Okay? Communities of practice allow teachers and leaders to act as co-producers. It's not a single expert spouting off all of the things. It is us co-creating that. And then I think that if we're honest with ourselves, we would say in our current state, communities of practice are only infrequently used for professional development. Okay? How many of you have engaged in an event that also had a community of practice? Okay? A couple of us? A few of us? What I would like to see is that is the default. That there is a community that is created anytime we come together, and that we do that over time. This, to me, is pretty important. Well, I'm trying to make space here. And this is a question for you to either explore now or later. How does this challenge you in your own PD? Either PD you give or that you receive. How does it challenge you to think about it differently? If you believe, hopefully as I do, that there is something important that's happening in online communities that is special and should be leveraged by more of us. One of the reasons why I asked this question is that somebody asked me a question that stopped me in my tracks the other day, probably 2 weeks ago. And they said, why do we give PD? Now, this is like a crazy question because we want to develop each other and we want to learn and things like that. But like, it was a sincere and honest question. It was like, why do we need PD? If we can go out and find all of these resources ourselves, if we can engage in these conversations ourselves, why is it that we need to come together? And thinking about what is valuable about this, the online space, about being together. Because no matter what, even if we tried, we would never be able to all come together as a group. Even if I chose a date 7 years in the future, we would never be able to do it. This is the only time that we are all going to be together. And so if we don't capitalize on the community that we are either creating or have created right now, it's never going to happen. Which is why the very last thing that I want to do is join this community. So in between the thing that we were just doing and the joining of this community is a whole bunch of research. And the reason why I put it in there is you're going to have to convince somebody else at your building or your district that this is important. So I put in all of the different reasons why it's important or why it's valuable and why it might be useful. And so you can use any one of those things in order to help persuade people to do so. Okay? But what I want to do with the remaining time here is to join the Bloodtastic, Bombastic, Personalized PD community of practice, and I want you to post something. I want you to post a question. I want you to look at what's there and post a comment. I would like you to interact in some way, shape, or form within the community. And as you are opening it up, so you just click on it and open up the community itself, ask to join the community, because it is semi-private. You won't be able to see the posts and interact with them until you're in. So you request to join, and what I'll do is I will allow you to come in. Is that nice? And so what I'm going to do is, as you're sort of requesting, I can approve all of you at once. So the first 20 of you can now refresh your screen, and you should be able to get in. Oh, I love that. Susan, where are you? How many books are you holding in that picture?
Oh, I don't know how to. Those are just.
That's pretty great. Come on. I swear to you, I pressed that button already. So it may take us a second. But go in there and check it out and post something. Think about one of the things that you would like to do. In here, there are a couple of examples. Okay? Something about your own practice, something about what is going on for you up at the conference here. Maybe. And while you're waiting, you can also go back up and read the research or answer that rather large question that we have from before. I'm just going to do this individually, because apparently I can't do them all. Man, some really good pictures. Lots of dogs, I'm noticing. What's the name? What's your dog's name?
Cash.
Cash?
It's funny though, he was born in
Oh, really?
Yeah, but we got one later. That was just because it cost so pure.
I love it. There you are, guys. All right. Everybody should be able to refresh now and hop in. And there's actually the video of who was talking about digital introverts. So there's a video of a TED Talk from the person. It's really quite good. So she wrote this book, The Power of Introverts, I think. Really fascinating look at we expect people to be extroverted for a lot of reasons, but that there's like a lot of power in being introverted and reflecting on things. There's a whole bunch of posts, so you can just keep on scrolling for a while. That's like a bastard. Yeah. Anybody having trouble getting in? Try to refresh one more time. Yes. Yeah, because you were already accepted. Oh, yeah. Anybody else?
I just gave her a really good
All right, the very last thing that I want to show you guys is if you scroll all the way down, there is a document that says how to create and use a community in Google+. The only reason we're using Google+ for our online communities is because it's super easy and I like them. But that's sort of where we've created a lot of our communities within DPS, as well as, you know, there are thousands of them that exist. But if you hop in there, there's this big, long document that has step-by-step instructions for how to join, create, and work within communities. And they're all animated GIFs, so that you can see, you know, what it looks like. And it's a step-by-step process for each one of you. I really want to thank everybody for coming out, playing along, and having some really good conversation with one another. And I want to challenge you, you are all within a community, use it. See you guys later.